Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar event talking about prototyping this evening and helping you guys to turn prototyping into your innovation superpower. I am Adam Murphy. I'm pleased to be hosting the discussion tonight with Leslie Barry and Adam Norris, who I'll introduce here in a second. Hopefully everybody's hearing us clearly as we're going through tonight. If you want to make some comments, you can post those right in the event page and we will do our best to come back to any questions or comments that you have for us. I know from the registrations that we have people joining from all around the world today. So shout out hello to Daniel in Bulgaria, to Assad in Greece, Shafiq in Singapore, Richard in London, Sylvia in Peru, hola, and Derek in Galway. So we'll see if anyone else has joined from around the world. Drop us a note in the comments. We'd love to hear how far things have gone. Tonight, we're going to be talking about prototyping and pretotyping. We'll talk in a little bit about what the difference is between those, if anything. But to help me do that, I have grabbed two people who I have had the pleasure of meeting during my career who are experts in this space. So first, I'd like to introduce Leslie Barry from Exponentially. Leslie is a seasoned prototyper and has led innovation at ThoughtWorks and at SportsBet and built and sold multiple startups, but more importantly for today has trained more than 1,000 people in pretotyping, including guest lecturing at Stanford, and has helped lots of enterprises save millions of dollars by testing ideas, running over 4,000 experiments, Leslie.
Yeah, welcome. Oh, thank you, Adam, and it's really good to be here tonight. Looking forward to it.
Excellent, excellent. Now, alongside Leslie, we have another Adam, Adam Norris. We had the chance to work together when I was leading innovation at CUB. We crossed paths, and glad to have Adam here as well. We crossed paths when you were at Monash Food Innovation Centre.
That's right.
And you're now running Annular Design. Tell us about that.
Yeah, look, my background's similar to Adam here, and it's great to be here talking to you all about one of our favourite topics, prototyping and pretotyping. Look, my background is definitely, is in commercial innovation and industrial design, and as a designer, prototyping's been part of my day-to-day life for over 14 years, and it's just, from my first job with Mondelez, working in their design lab, through to the work at Monash Food Innovation when I met you, Adam. Prototyping is used pretty much, I've used it in every project with every client. It's such a core critical skill to what I do. And, over the last year and a half, I started Annular Design to focus more on my personal values and passion, which is all focusing on circular design for products and packaging solutions. But I've brought along prototyping as part of that core offering. Like, it's always there. So I'm really excited to sort of talk to you guys a bit more about what that looks like and how we've helped our previous clients and how hopefully people online can leverage this a bit in their day-to-day work lives to, accelerate and de-risk their own product developments.
Brilliant. I can't wait to jump into that. Now, we've all had the opportunity to lead innovation in different organizations. Leslie, there's lots of parts to innovation. So how did you come to be or focused on or become what I would call a guru in prototyping in particular?
Well, I was anointed by Alberto Savoia on the mountain in Mountain View.
Yes, yeah.
Not at all. So through building lots of startups and failing at a lot of them and driving innovation in companies, I got really frustrated that we're spending a lot of time and effort building things that nobody wants and building products and services nobody wants, and we can all nod along to that probably.
Yeah.
And it seemed like might be a better way to do it. And I hunted around a bit to find a way to what this approach could be, and discovered pretotyping. And it wasn't something I made up. It was created at Google and taught at Stanford by Alberto Savoia, who written the book The Right Hit, by the way. And I decided to pretotype it and see if this was a way to do it in the enterprise. It's really easy to test ideas and run experiments in startups and scale-ups on a small scale. But when you hit the enterprise barrier and you're doing this with hundreds or thousands of ideas and experiments, how do you actually test that? And it's like any change program, what you need to do is get the people, the tools, the resources, the politics, the risk or risk mitigation, all these kinds of things. And that became a really interesting problem. So it's one of those, I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment. It's a hard problem to solve. As you know, anyone in innovation is you're never going to win. You're just pushing and pushing and pushing because it's counter to people's normal behavior, which is to not accept failure, to pretend that failure doesn't happen, and it's actually the reality, and you're trying to just show reality and try and get data over opinion. So that's what led me to do this. So I'm 8 years in on the 15th of September with Exponentially. So prototyping has been my lifeblood for the last 8 years.
Yeah, great. And you mentioned you kind of joked about being ordained on the mountaintop, but you have yourself gone and guest lectured at Stanford and worked with Alberto Savoia, and you actually took a tour of innovators to the US, which I was sad I missed out on that one, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can't tell you all of it. We went to Vegas.
Leave that bit out. The Silicon Valley part.
We'll cut that from the recording, right?
We've done it a few times. So as a prototype, I created I haven't even thought about this, the Global Pretotyping Summit of 2019, which I completely made up over a few beers, and accidentally 4 customers decided they want to do it, and they came with. So for 2 weeks, we went to Consumer Electronics Show to look at what's happening. Went to which was in Vegas. We also went to San Francisco, Mountain View, Google, Facebook, all those different companies, just to get on the ground and get a feeling of what people are actually doing. And I think a key takeaway there would be learning that someone like Facebook, for example, runs 10,000 or so experiments a day concurrently. So a day, like all the time.
Wow. Yeah.
And they release products and features automatically based on data. This was then. They're still doing these things. So it's really about getting on the ground, getting a feeling for what's actually happening.
Yeah, amazing. And Adam, you kind of also cut your teeth or got into this culture of experimentation in the university environment at Monash, and I think maybe also at Melbourne Uni.
Yeah. And look, it's just interesting hearing from Leslie and his experience in prototyping, and just, a lot of the talk in prototyping as a tool and why we use it as businesses, it's to move fast, right?
Yeah.
And it's to de-risk at speed.
Yes.
And I'm actually a little bit fascinated from your experience, Leslie, just at how fast you move in comparison, because my world's physical prototypes. Yes. And I talk about moving fast with physical prototypes. And I'm talking, moving fast in the physical world's, it's within a week. And, over a couple of days, and you're talking fast, you're talking thousands within a day. And it just sort of, it's such an eye opener for me in that sort of more digital and ideas realm, that they move that fast in comparison. So I cut a lot of my teeth on the more physical product and packaging side of things in fast moving consumer goods. And look, really, that Monash life was very interesting because we were both practitioners in terms of working for companies on innovation projects, as well as educators. So we actually took the likes of Coles and Woolworths through how to become an innovator. So we took them through front-end innovation methodologies. So then they could learn the tools of the trade, they could move faster, and they could make better decisions based on insights into what products they accepted into their categories. So it was that perfect sort of pairing for me as I got to preach and practice. And that really sort of solidified a lot of the knowledge I gained. And that, prototyping is just one of those core tools that is just inherently key to it. You can't skip it. And it was just funny, Adam, this morning I was talking to a designer I know, and he was, working for one of the top 5 banks. And he was just sort of saying, look, they're talking about this major software they're rolling out and how it's going to affect half the business. And it's quite incredible to say that, their biggest fear of prototyping was getting bad feedback. Yeah, I'm like, that's the purpose. You want prototypes to fail because it's not as expensive, and it's quick, and it's iterative. And so it's surprising. I still run into that. I find it a little bit perplexing that after 12 years, I'm still sitting in a room preaching the benefits of prototyping to businesses and to yourselves and to the wider audience, when for me it's sort of like a no-brainer, and it's just it's got benefits so broad across a business and projects and MPD.
Yeah, but it is a really common question though that I think that comes up. I think a lot of the writing and a lot of the kind of the culture around prototyping, at least initially, started in the CX UX world, and lots of talks about, you can kind of just mock up an app and on paper and slide it through a cardboard phone and these kinds of things. But then a lot of people in the physical product world, and I do a lot of work in the fast-moving consumer goods space, more on the front end, doing the kind of empathy, design, ideate kind of phase. We'd get to prototyping, and people would say that's hard in the physical product world. So maybe it's going to inspire people out there that might be thinking about that. Can you share some examples? I know like we worked on one together where we were able to bring a new product to the market in 60 days from thinking about it to putting it on the shelf.
Yeah, and that's such a great example. 60 days for a physical product from inception of an idea to being on shelves is astronomically fast. And I love this project. It's a favorite one because, of course, I met Murph there. And, it was working with Carlton United Breweries on a new to category launch for their RTDs in the actual brand and its first launch of a seltzer. And why that was really breakthrough is we ran what was called a design sprint. People know them in different shapes and forms, but the purpose of this one was really to bring the agency in-house, to bring the marketing teams, all the decision makers into this design sprint framework. And then us as the sort of innovators, we brought the ideas to life. So we translated the brand, the pack, and all the communications into real life physical prototypes. So when we went to the consumer groups, which we did iteratively over about 3 days, each time we could test a new iteration, refining that brand proposition, refining the pack proposition, and refining, the whole proposition as a whole. Like, what's the concept we're trying to convey? Do people want to buy this? What effects is it between a squat can and a slim can, Because when you're going, especially for them, when they're going into a new category that they've never been in before, it was so critical for them to get the best feedback and insights they could, and they wouldn't have been able to do that without the physical prototype. So for them, and it'll be great to hear what you thought of it being on the other side, Adam, and being with Carlton United. But for us, it was all about enabling your team to de-risk and accelerate that development process.
Yeah, look, I think that I was leading innovation there at the time, and we looked at it and we said seltzers were huge in the US, and they're going to come here, and they're going to come here quickly, and first to market's going to be really important. And we knew all the principles around design sprints, and I just said to my team, let's just take the what would have to be true mentality and say, for us to develop the product, the packaging, the branding, all of these kinds of things over 4 days, or I think it was 3 days or 4 days, talking to consumers, what would have to be true. So we had you and your team there ready to print new labels, to 3D print different can shapes, these kinds of things. We brought in our design agency who was sitting in the back room listening to the feedback and going, oh, okay, the font is like the font's too plain. Let's try something with a serif. And they were mocking it up while we're still talking to consumers. And we had our technical team in the kitchens at the food science lab there, changing the amount of alcohol. Well, it tasted too much like vodka. Okay, we'll put less of it in. They were changing the flavor proportions and mixing new flavors in the background. People said maybe the lime should have some mint. They got some, and they were ready to go, and we were changing things live. So it was all about asking that question of not why can't we do it, but what would have to be true for us to do this? And we didn't answer every single final part of the product there, but by iterating so quickly, that's how we were able to then get in the remainder of these 60 days, the actual product, no pun intended, because it was called actual, up and on the shelf so quickly. So that was huge. Leslie, talk to us about examples you've seen in, I guess, product or non-digital worlds as well of people prototyping.
Before I do that, just step back a bit around the difference between a pretotype and a prototype.
Let's do that, yes.
Should I touch on that?
Yep.
So my job is to stop people getting to your job, basically. And what I mean...
What are you trying to tell me, Leslie?
No. I mean, increase the quality of what you get. So the simple difference between a pretotype and a prototype. A prototype is asking the question, can we make this thing? A pretotype was asking, should we bother to make this in the first place?
Yeah.
So what pretotyping is doing is, before customers getting to you to the point of that of the prototype, we're going out of all these possible ideas, out of hundreds or thousands of ideas. How do we know which ones we should invest in, and how do we reduce risk once again and increase confidence in our bets? And we do that through rapid experimentation, typically in the digital space. And what we're doing there is really answering the question of, in the best case scenario, what would have to be true for customers to even engage with this, to give us data over opinion? And data is doing something. In the digital world, the simple way to think of it is a website with a value proposition on it. Do you want to buy this thing? There's a buy button. You click the buy button. We've got data. And obviously, don't go straight to asking for money. But that's what a pretotype does differently to a prototype. So I just wanted to sort of get that on the table.
It's really important. While we're on that one, I
Yeah.
think one of the questions someone had talked to me when I was talking about today's event was, is a pretotype or a prototype the same as an MVP or a minimum viable product, or how are those different in your mind?
Absolutely not. So an MVP, and this is very pertinent at the moment because we're going straight from I have a brainwave to let's vibe code a thing and put a thing out there.
Yeah.
Okay. We're still skipping the step, which is, does anybody care? So the first question is, are we solving a problem that matters? And the second question is, how do we know? And the third question is, how do we get data to prove that that's true? And we do this with prototyping without building any technology. So a simple example would be, I did some work over the last month with a crypto exchange, and their first prototype was, can't give the details, but the way they spun it up was, how do you get this in front of a small sample set of customers, like 100, very quickly to get them to do something? And we thought intercom. We could get cohorts, we could put a value prop in front of customers with intercom, we could ask them a question, we can get a measurable result out of that to see if it passes or fails. And what you're trying to do is cross that hurdle of, does anybody care? Sadly, for everybody's listening, mostly nobody cares.
Yes.
Yeah, no one's interested. All your ideas are bad. Nobody cares about your stupid idea. And it's very, very difficult to get any level of interest. So an MVP is later, once you've really refined it, once you've been through, I can't speak on your behalf around prototyping, but once you have enough certainty that customers actually care about this thing, then you make something to put in front of them to go, which is a minimum viable product, to go, do you care about this thing? So an MVP is like build, measure, learn. Prototyping is learn, measure, build.
Yeah, excellent. And I think there's legacy things that have been used even in the consumer goods world that we can probably put under the heading of prototyping. So traditional concept screening is kind of fitting into the same space. So we're not necessarily suggesting people have to add a new skill, but just kind of reposition and start to think about those and then expand that toolkit. There's other ways to do it other than here's a picture and 3 paragraphs. What do you think? There's lots of other ways.
And then you get opinion, not data.
Correct. So that's the key difference, I think, is moving towards getting people to respond with behavior or action that actually gives us
touch a thing and feel a thing. I'm dying to play with you. But that's what you want to do, is like, what's really going on here? Not, would you like one of these? Yes, I would. They're lying.
And maybe just to kind of extend that thought about the types of industries that can do it, and to prove that I'm not just here as a talking head, but even in the space of like hospitality and physical services and stuff like that. In my time at Anheuser-Busch InBev in the US, we were looking at ways to change the bar experience, which hopefully we'll see some of you later at a bar and we can talk about that. But and we had all these thoughts about things that we could do that were going to be really hard and expensive to do. But what we did, we took over a bar in Boston, right like literally across the street from Fenway Park, which as a Yankees fan, I didn't enjoy very much. But and we made a bunch of the changes to this bar with the bar owner's permission, mostly out of corflute. So one of the ideas was that in terms of creating more opportunities for the bartenders to serve people, you needed to increase the surface area of the bar.
Yes.
And that was commonly known, but typically bars are long and straight or a U shape. And we were playing with other ideas, and somebody had the idea to kind of make one with more coves in it, kind of like the top of a castle, that would then increase the surface area. Then you could have more bartenders serving things. So we did that, but we built these coves out of corflute in a real bar, and just had real regular people come in. And we said, hey, we're doing some experiments in here tonight. I think they had like happy hour prices all night because sorry for the inconvenience. And we discovered with this coved bar that it was excellent and more people could get served, but the coves became these little traps where if you went into the cove to get served, you were then stuck within this little square. And that fast learning saved us from, we could have built this in a real bar somewhere and found out it was a terrible idea. And we tested a whole bunch of other things about different types of tables and formats and stuff as well.
I think it's really interesting as well. Like, they're not in conflict. And
Not
that's
at
the
all.
key thing, because for me, in a lot of, the work I'm now focusing on in sort of emerging circular products and things, products are moving from the age old, last century of being a physical thing to an ecosystem of things. So that's a product that has a service and a system built around it. And so for me, I see, and that's why I was fascinated by just the speed you can work out in prototyping, because for me, I'm seeing that these integrated product ecosystems need that, diverse way of prototyping and pretotyping to test the whole proposition, not just the physical product format, not just the digital product format, but the service, the offering, what's the experience, and both tools together can be a really nice pairing for a lot of these businesses that we work with to test the whole gambit, not just coming to, pinch hitting to one person to test one part. It's like the whole process.
I think to add to that just quickly is, we're not saying that everything has to be digital and you never ever make a thing. What it's about is the core principle of, are you getting data? Are you getting the customer to actually use and engage with thing in a real way where they don't know that it's an experiment? And I think that's really matters.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's key. Now, one of the other things that people may be, I guess, intimidated by or may have not started down the path because of might be thinking about having the right tech or right capabilities or the right network of partners to actually start. So talk to us about that. Like, I know with starting annually, you've now built a whole network of people that can help with different types of things. What's your advice to people in terms of getting started?
Yeah, look, and it's probably the most common question I get asked as well, where it's, how do you get started with prototyping? How can you access it? And I mean, just like we're talking about prototyping, there is a suite of different, software and solutions that can help you prototype. But my biggest advice is just getting hands-on. It's a practical tool, right? There is rough prototyping in the physical realm. You can start at rough prototyping, which is legitimately like buy a competitor product and get Play-Doh and literally map it on. Get your phone. There's plenty of free 3D scanning apps where you can scan in that thing, change the label, reprint it, put it on the thing. There's some really rough tools that you can do to quickly, within, an hour, get a rough prototype to give you feedback and inform your decisions, right through to then, I've got this whole little suitcase of goodies in front of me, where you go into the more standardized sort of prototyping technologies. You've got CNC milling, we've got 3D printing, the most common one, but you can also look at like casting for like silicon prototypes. And these are all things that can be done within a couple of hours. And that's, what I'm trying to say is that it's so accessible at the moment. Like it's been more accessible than it's ever been in my entire career. And it's only becoming more so with technologies. So for business, it's always about maybe talk to someone that has experience in it and see if it's something that you can implement yourself. And if not, then work with, someone that does it for a full-time gig. But I think it's something that I always recommend people can totally pick it up and do it themselves.
Yeah. Yep. I guess one of the challenges that sometimes you run into, especially in the food world as well, is there's challenges in production. Companies have big production lines that are made for producing the same thing a million times over and putting it into the same pack. And perhaps also limitations in terms of not wanting to bring allergens into factories or experiment with new ingredients and those kinds of things. What creative ways have you seen people do things outside the normal box?
Yeah, look, definitely with one of my most favorite ones, funny enough, was actually working with a production line engineer on this well-established packing line that has been pumping the same thing for 20 years. And we actually went, okay, hey, we're creating this new product line and pack line. And he's like, all right, well, we're going to need a new line machine. And I go, really? Why is that? Like, because I'm not a packing line technologist, I don't know about it. And he says like, oh, it's because we've got these limited parameters to do with the shape, size, and form. And I go, we can prototype that, right? We can make something that fits that footprint and also achieves the objectives of the marketing brand team. And so what we did is we created 3D prototypes similar to sort of like these bottles, and we ran it down the line. So we used a aseptic material, so it pretty much meant it could be treated, and then we ran it down that line. See if it went through the bumpers, see whether it could be sorted. We had the location pins on the bottom of the bottle, see if it gets sorted, and we could do that. And we could do that within a really fast period of time. And it was just that whole thing of like, the technologies and the techniques are there. It's just actually probably similar to like what Leslie's saying. It becomes more of then a thought exercise, and you need to be in a business that goes, can we ask that question? Are we allowed to test that and try that versus that established sort of, we can't do that. And that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, there's a definitely a change management kind of component, Leslie, right, in terms of changing the way that people think about what experiments are.
As you're talking, I was just thinking through that piece, which is it's there's many ways to do these, to run experiments and spin things up and 3D print and not trivializing that, sorry. It's like there's a lot of ways to do that. And your job is hard. My job is easy. We just put stuff on the internet and like measure stuff. But the bigger problem is like, does the culture in an organization allow you to even have permission to try new things and think about it a different way? Or is this just the way we do things here? And I work with companies, all companies I've worked with so far, I screen, it sounds arrogant, I don't mean like that, but I'll work with a company based on the fact that their leadership actually wants to make this happen and gives people permission to change. And I'm not just paying lip service to say, it's okay, let's fail or die and go innovate. We're innovators, and then nobody's innovating anything. And if you fail, you get fired.
Yeah.
You know? Okay. So it's super important that upfront you set that kind of culture and that environment where we're failing, but we're doing it to mitigate risk and it's safe. And this is how we do it. And it's hypothesis-driven testing, and we get the organization aligned. It's all the inverted commas boring stuff, but it's massively important because you have to give people permission to actually think differently about it and execute differently and challenge it. And it's very simple. One of the ways we approach it is just to go, how can I test this tomorrow morning for $0? Which you can't do, but your brain goes to a very interesting place to challenge that. And what is the quickest way I can get this out the door? And are we solving the biggest one? The killer of 50% of ideas is, what is the customer problem we're solving? Because often we're not solving any customer problem. We're doing it because at the moment, AI, we've got AI, let's make an AI thing. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? So I think I meandered there a little bit, but it's really setting that environment where you can do this at scale. Plus, then you don't want to create chaos. So what is the systematic approach, the boring systematic process that you can repeat, that just helps you drive and spin that innovation engine and get those wheels turning so that you can do this at scale, supported by capability, tools, software, whatever you need. Yeah.
I mean, I'd just like to ask a question on that. Like, what have you seen work in terms of people that are probably listening and going, how would I actually initiate that? You know, they might not be, within that senior management area where they can make that decision or get the resource immediately to do that. You know, what have you seen sort of work in terms of?
Use me to tell them, but what I mean by that is one of the slides, when I'm doing like an executive intro, one of the slides is Astro Tallo, who runs Google's innovation labs, very famous innovator, going like 99% of ideas that they see out of tens of thousands of ideas per year are going to fail. We all know that. But the key slide is failure is the default outcome. So the normal state of early stage ideas of innovation is failure. That doesn't help you if you don't have the leadership power to change it. So what helps you is to go, failure is reframed as reducing time to data. So it's rapid learning. So if I said to you, and I can't remember who said this, because I'd like to give them credit, but a few weeks ago I read and said, if you knew to take you 20 failures to make a $100 million product, how fast do you want to fail? As fast as you possibly can. So it's that kind of thinking, and it's really about reframing it from failure to rapid learning.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I was just literally this morning reading about a case, which I was telling you guys about offline before, of a company, an Australian-based company that built a properly working space propulsion jet engine in a shipping container on a farm in Queensland. 3 guys.
Unreal.
And it was called Space Machines Inc. If people want to have a look, it's on LinkedIn, published in the last couple of days. And the author, one of those 3 guys that wrote the post, said that they plan to fail. He said, we plan to fail because every failure teaches us something. Mm-hmm. And importantly, the failures teach us the things that we don't even know to ask about yet. And I think that's one of the great things about prototyping and pretotyping is it's once you actually get into the process that you start to figure out the things much earlier than you used to. I've worked on innovation projects that seem like they were swimming along, and then you hit that hurdle, that thing which just stops the whole project in its tracks. Yeah. This is all about finding those things out as early as possible.
It teaches you the questions to ask.
Yeah, and you can start to apply those over. Yeah. Just coming back to your point, Leslie, about then creating the system, creating the process. Talk about that. You've built tools, through Exponentially to help people do that. But why is it so important to build a sustainable, repeatable framework?
So the lifespan of an innovation leader is 18 months. I've done the research on LinkedIn, and you can go and look if you don't believe me. So when I started working with the organization, and there might be one or two on the call who are smiling right now, I'll say to you, if you're in innovation, you're doing this with me, you're going to get fired in 18 months because, or you're going to be massively successful. And either way, you're successful. And why does that happen? It's because there's not appetite for 7 years of venture funding and investment, and you're going through multiple financial years, etc. So that happens because you don't have a sustainable system. You have champions. And Astro Taylor, once again, to quote him, says that you need a champion of innovation inside the organization to drive this. But you're pushing upstream against everything in the organization. The organization is designed to create a stable environment that's repeatable, and you're disrupting things and changing and playing with new things. So that means you can't fight that. If that's true, you need to work with that system and plug into that system and create something the system recognizes. So what we've done is we've got really simple process where we will do some training up front to teach you to believe what I'm saying to you, because it sounds like nonsense when you tell people prototyping and failure and it's good and don't worry, trust me. Okay, and we're going to save you millions of dollars, which we do. So we do some training up front. We do like a rapid sprint for 2 or 4 weeks to prove that this works for you in your company and that we can actually run experiments. So my first metric is time to first experiment. How fast from when you engage till we can get experiment out the door. If an experiment goes out the door, what happens? Everything's working. You've passed risk, legal, marketing, capability, engineering it. We can build it. We've got permission, all those kinds of things. And you can do that for a month or so, and that's fun. And then what? It grinds to a halt because there's no system. So wrapped around that, we've built a tool called Rapidly, which is a platform to help manage ideas and experiments at scale across an organization. So you can run hundreds of experiments and manage the complexities of people moving and capturing knowledge and designing and not running too many at the same time and all these kinds of things. And that then becomes the system, because my job is not to land and expand. My job is to come in, teach you how to do it, and leave a system behind that allows you to iterate through that and do that at scale. It only works when you're running hundreds of experiments a year. If you're running 5 or 10 experiments a year, you're wasting your time. Because if 90% are going to fail, do the maths, okay?
Yeah.
So that's how we do it. So it can, we talk about process and method and all these things, but you need a sustainable innovation engine to be able to drive the right outcomes. Otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah. And you're spot on. Like, from when I was at SA and working within that, we had in many other businesses, and people might be familiar with it, your innovation pipeline, right? And it's like, how do you filter what goes into that,
exactly.
in that first step when everyone's got ideas in a business. Every team member has ideas. And, you can run workshops for days and you can gather thousands of ideas.
Yeah.
But then, how do you take that next step? And, as a practitioner, it was backbreaking work. You kind of go through a review and be like, can you build upon that? Is there an insight in that? Is there something we can further unpick?
Yeah.
And it sounds like Rapidly is just that perfect tool for, getting and helping that distillation process of those ideas.
That's exactly it. And we overcomplicate. I don't want to sound like I'm pimping Rapidly, but we overcomplicate innovation. Innovation is not complicated. You capture ideas, you prioritize ideas, you run experiments, and they pass or they fail or you stop them. Okay, if they pass, you invest in them. If they fail, you save money. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, and Rapidly does just that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think, as you said before, getting to the ideas is another thing. That's another topic for another day, one that I could talk about in a lot more detail. But yeah, I think a lot of people get to that point, as you said, of 1,000 Post-it notes on a wall.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yes.
Now where do we
that's
go?
what they do.
Right?
And it's the same with I also do quite a lot of work with small scale businesses and even startups and scale ups, and they've got the same problem of the wall of post-its and ideas. They've just got different tensions that are stopping them from testing that. But they both have that same problem of going, how do we distill large volumes of information, and then how do we prioritize which ones we should do this and go actual physically prototype? Like, which are those ones? Because it does get more expensive as you go down that development pipeline, and that's what it's all about, right?
That's exactly right.
Less costs up front. The further down you go that development pipeline, the higher the risk and the higher the cost.
100%.
Yeah, and often the phrase that gets rolled out in innovation, so because maybe it hasn't been as much in the last 5 years as it was for 5 years before that, was to try and solve for that was fewer, bigger, better, right? And I've said to a lot of clients and people I've talked to about innovation that I've always thought that phrase was back to front. Like, it should be better and bigger, and then by nature become fewer. And I think that the idea there is kind of back to front in terms of saying, oh, choose out of all those things on the wall the couple that we're going to go and test. But when you move to a model where you're testing and prototyping and pretotyping in really lo-fi, you don't have to be as selective. And have to give credit to one of my clients that I've been working with recently with Mars, and thank you to Julia who said it was okay to to talk about it today without going into any great detail. But typically, they would have gone through the process of going, okay, we've got all these ideas, now we've got to get a handful of them to be able to test. But we took a different approach and we did the full human-centered design sprint. And when we got up to prototyping, so we had the ideas and we had 2 big demand spaces we were working on, and about 20 ideas in each of those that everybody thought there could be legs on these.
Yeah. Now
to test those, and get people tasting them and eating them in their environment was really difficult. We had wacky ingredients in there that definitely couldn't be brought into the factory in Ballarat. We had all these kinds of constraints. But to their credit, the team said, how do we do this? And Ant, who leads R&D, said, again, what would have to be true? How do we make this work?
Yes.
And we got marketing people, R&D people, sales people into a commercial cooking school, which had all the facilities that we needed, got ingredients in there, prototyped 40 plus the 400 individual items of 40 different concepts, and then brought that back the next day to their headquarters and had friends and family panel coming through testing like that. So it really is possible no matter what it is that you're doing. So, and that allowed us to actually validate way more ideas than would have otherwise been practical, where it would have probably had to have been sat in a boardroom and narrowed down to 3 of those things that could actually be made for prototyping. So
and just the associated learning and development for all the team members involved, not just the business and the product ideas themselves, but the learnings of the team members. Because unfortunately, even as subject matter experts, we're people, we make assumptions. Yeah. And this process is so good at removing, subconscious biases, assumptions that we make on everything from an idea right through to a prototype. I, as a, fully mechanically double-handed person, I assume I can open that with ease. And that's an assumption. It doesn't mean my target audience can.
Yeah.
And that's what prototyping and pretotyping do. It removes that as a practitioner, someone that's pushing forward what we think is the great ideas and the great designs and the great products and the great packaging. It removes that.
I'm glad you touched on that, because I often talk about what we do. Just we helping you to stop and pause and think, because it isn't about prototyping and making the thing a running experiment. That's just the end result of the thinking. But what we don't give ourselves time for is stopping to think. So if you take an hour with 10 people to do a lean canvas and think about the customer problem, you come out with a much higher quality, like 10, 100 times better quality than 10 of us imagining that we're all on the same page, which we're definitely not. And then you take the next step to go, okay, what does good look like before we start? How do we measure good like before we even start doing anything? And then based on our hypothesis, what do we believe to be true? And then design the experiment. That 2 hours of thinking, and I've seen it happen so many times, and it's a feedback we get all the time. It's so powerful because those teams never talk to each other. The diversity of thought never happens, and someone just runs with it as if they know the answer. So that's the most powerful thing. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and it does involving more people in the process, like getting people hands-on actually making prototypes and having them, if there's the opportunity, actually talking to consumers about that. Doesn't just benefit in terms of their understanding of the project, but you're right, like many clients, I see the upside of that in terms of people's engagement as that thing moves further down the process, but also their overall engagement, enthusiasm that is created around innovation.
Absolutely.
Where people might otherwise be doubters in terms of, okay, well, let's just stick to our knitting. It gets people really, really involved. What we're talking about here probably connects to one of the audience questions that came in ahead of time from Dave, who asked, how do we ensure when we're doing these early stage lo-fi kind of prototypes that they provide meaningful insight and avoid the risk of internal teams overreacting or judging too quickly or making decisions too quickly once we start to test?
I can have a go?
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Disconnect the idea from the person. So because traditionally the way we get ideas up is we go, I've got this awesome idea. I'm putting my career all in on 00. And believe me, here's a fancy spreadsheet, give me some money. And if it fails, I'm in trouble. If you're doing high volume of ideas and at a very early stage. And the first step that you take is disconnect the idea from the person. What I mean by that is, like, we go, as a team, let's talk about the idea from the customer perspective. So you break in that, like, this is my idea kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then going through a structured process that feels trusted. That's why we do the training. The training is not for the believers, it's for the people in the organization who might be skeptical or not sure. So a structured process, it's hypothesis-driven testing, it's low risk, we're not going to break anything, it's managed, and we believe this to be what a good outcome looks like. Do we agree? Yes, we agree. These are the numbers. Okay. So we're saying at least, like we're going to say this evening, at least 10% of people who have signed up to come and have drinks with us are going to arrive, for example. That would be good hypothesis. We'll find out. So you've thought that through up front. Then when you go and run, it's a very different having an idea and someone in the organization said, no, it's a bad idea. 2, we've run experiments, customers aren't engaging with it. So people are quite satisfied with that. So I think that just taking risk out and making comfort and make it trusted and repeatable over time takes away that problem.
And definitely, just to build on Leslie's comments there, that taking the risk out element, and that's sort of what I've had the most success with, is when you present them these low fidelity concepts, whether it's physical or digital. It's all about going, hey, this is also the biggest opportunity for change and feedback.
Yeah.
And so it's flipping that narrative in your team's mind, in other team members' minds, because we're communal beings. Everyone wants to give a bit of feedback. So it's actually the best time to sort of say, hey guys, this is also the earliest stage. So it's actually the stage where we want the most feedback.
Yes.
And people then go from going, what's not working? They go, how can I input into this?
Yes.
And how can I contribute to this process of developing, these early lo-fi mock-ups and prototypes?
And I've certainly seen that because things are lo-fi. I think sometimes people think, oh, I don't really want to put that in front of anybody because it's very lo-fi. But to your point about people wanting to give feedback, there is, and I can't remember the psychological term for it, but it's kind of a validated response that we have, that when you put something that's very, very polished in front of people and say, what do you think of this? Like if we said, what do you think of this can of drink that we are planning to launch? They will tend to say, that's pretty good. Yeah. Like, because they can see you've put a lot of time and effort. When you put the pencil sketch version of it or the Play-Doh wrapped around another thing kind of version that you said before, that's obviously far from complete, and say, give me feedback, they tend to be more open to say, it's a bit too tall or it's a bit too wide, or I wouldn't make it purple, or why are you even making another soft drink? People don't drink, don't want more soft drinks. They want more water or whatever like this. So I think that actually helps us to get more and better feedback.
Oh yeah, and I was just going to say, it sort of ties into, what defines a good prototype, right?
Oh, good. I had that question.
I jumped the gun a bit on Adam's little sheet here, but no, I thought it fit really well in with that whole thing. It's like, and it ties back to what Leslie was saying at the very start. It's about the question that you're trying to ask, and what is the feedback and the insights you're trying to garner, right? That's what defines a good prototype. Because there's low fidelity, there's medium, there's high, there's market ready prototypes. What is the question in that space of time that's going to inform your new product development and your business decisions? And then make the prototype reflect that. And what I mean there is like, if you are more, you've got a finished brand and the form factor and it's much more around a few label variations, then you go to closer to market ready prototypes where it's, visually looks like a glass bottle, all those things. But if you're more in like, what does this actual product need to be? Like,
what is it solving?
Yeah. What is it solving? Then it needs to be more amorphic and less structured, because as you say, that you won't get the feedback that you
like the core flute bars. We didn't want feedback from people about whether the bar looked attractive. We just wanted to know, does the flow work? And it didn't.
Yes.
Right. So it was fit for the question in that case. Yeah.
And the other part of this is that the non-scientific bit is, when you know. So we get very hung up on something being beautiful or not beautiful, or is it low fidelity and on brand or not on brand, or polished to an nth degree, etc. But when you're solving a problem, people will forgive many things. A great example, which I will probably overuse, ChatGPT. It was a text box that you typed stuff into, and it typed stuff back to you.
Yeah,
that's like 1980.
Yeah,
okay? And 700 million users or billion users later, like it's solving a problem at a pace, at a scale, it's like 10x better than anything else solves a problem. And you go and do that. So it matters, but I think we over-index on what the thing looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So the coming back to Dave's question about how do we stop people kind of jumping the gun or overreacting to initial tests? I think someone once suggested to me or used a single word you can add to the end when somebody leaps in, if you've done an early prototype and they say, oh, that idea doesn't work. The most important word is yet, right? So it's about saying, yes, that iteration isn't where it needs to be yet, right?
Yeah.
What did we learn? Have we got learning to say we should iterate again? Or to your point, Leslie, is sometimes the answer is we shouldn't because it's not solving a problem for people.
Yeah.
But sometimes the answer is that's right. They didn't respond well to that. But what we learned is they didn't respond well because it was too tall, it was too fat, it was the wrong color, whatever. So we should go again. And I think that's an important piece of the whole principle of prototyping is you see it often laid out in whoever's version of human-centered design or these kinds of things as a step, but it's really super iterative.
And it's about the speed. Yes, because you just to add to almost the opposite of what you said, that's true. And is what more often happens is you'll run a few things happen. You'll run one experiment and it passes and everyone says, yes, it's awesome. That's insane. Like one experiment doesn't prove anything. You have to run multiple experiments. So run 3 to 6 experiments and see if you can develop a pattern. But if the boss loves it and you run the experiments and you can't give people free money to take the thing, okay, and it fails, sometimes what will happen is the leader will come back and go, yeah, you've got the wrong customers, or, I love the idea, we should just make one. My magic question is, because we can do this at pace and it's cheap, we go, what insight do you have that we've missed that we can go and test tomorrow?
Yeah.
And sometimes there is an insight because you don't have all the information. Then you go and test it tomorrow. And if it fails again, very few people will push back on that.
Yeah. No, that's a great example because that's certainly something I'm sure people listening have faced is someone going, oh, well, no, I see that it failed, but
yeah.
And that's a great way to
Maybe try the blue one.
Well, what do you know?
Yeah.
What else do you know that we should have taken into consideration and we'll fix that?
Because testing is cheap and fast.
Yeah. That's really good. So coming towards the end of our time, I want to really focus in on, for people who are listening, I'd love to hear from both of you your advice in terms of how can people get better at prototyping? Where can they begin, or if they've begun, what can they go to get better in this space?
Yeah, it definitely links to what Leslie said earlier. Half the battle is, knowing about it and then knowing where to start and, being accepting of that process within your workflow, whether it be in a larger business or a smaller business. If you don't have that, then it's going to be really hard, right? And once you do, and hopefully you do get that sort of support that you need, it's much more, from my perspective, especially in the physical world, it's about getting hands-on. Like I hate to say it, it's like, grade school art class. It's literally like, get out the Stanley knife, start whipping up things to get us understanding of size, shape, form, and factor. So for me in the physical world, it's really good because it's very practical, very hands-on. And then, there are tools. There's so many free tools out there. 3D scanning, 3D printing is so accessible now. Like there's just so many technologies that make prototyping in the physical realm quick, easy, and cheap. That it's more of a convincing either your business or convincing yourself where can you make time to make this part of your process in developing these solutions.
In my world, Alberto has written a book called Write It, so you could read that.
You should read that. Absolutely.
Absolutely read that. Yep. There's a free PDF ebook, which was the prototype of prototyping back at Google. There's a whole story around that, which you can get on the exponentially.com website. I made my online training course free on YouTube over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that's available to go and educate yourself. Just what does this even mean? What's the way of thinking about it? There's Rapidly software you can download and try and use to help you through the process. And there's lots of resources around doing this. So once again, with this Adam, multiple Adams, is just do it. Like, don't be scared to fail, because you're going to fail. Like 100% you're going to fail. But the risk or the outcome of the failure is you're going to learn something. So just do something. You've got a great idea that's been bothering you for like a year and you've been churning on it. Whip up a website, put it out there and see what happens and learn. Just get in.
And people are not alone, right? So you started. How many people are on your Slack channel for prototyping? these days?
850 or so from around the world. Very competent, capable people that know how to do the stuff and people that are learning. So
Just
that's a
tell
good
people a
place to
little
start.
bit of what they can do there, or what they can learn, or who they can connect with.
Well, there's a range of people. Well, Alberto's obviously on there, but there's people from big telcos in Norway who understand how to do this. Klaus is really active on there. I can't pronounce his surname, sorry, Klaus. Who has run thousands of prototypes at scale and generated hundreds of millions of dollars worth of businesses. And a whole range of people from the guy Ed Keys, who created the first prototype for Google Glass, is on there. So there's a whole bunch of, there's a broad range of people around thinking about, the thing talking about a lot at the moment is AI and synthetic users and how do you accelerate experimentation using AI. So that's another whole conversation.
Yep.
And
in my experience, the people on there are very happy to share and talk and love talking about this topic. So it's a great.
We've got a
place to
fun
jump
job.
in.
We've got such a great job.
Absolutely.
Right?
We're playing.
Yeah. We get to make things. We get to look and feel and give feedback. It's everyone I've met in the space and you've got in that community. It's just we're just happy to share because it's not the more people that use that process, the better. Really.
Back to the beginning.
Better solutions at that.
We're frustrated that we have to tell people that you have to do this thing. It's so obvious that you have to run experiments. Like, why will you not?
It's a bit perplexing because you sometimes feel like you're stopping, promoting your own business. Like, guys, you should be doing this yourself, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and that's part of it. There may be a point in time where someone needs one of you guys to help support this, but start small. Start with something yourself. Even start with something outside of your work sphere. Start with trying to prototype, make that thing that you need for your backyard instead of going and buying it at Bunnings. See if you can just experiment and get into that habit of thinking, let me just start and iterate and start and move step by step until I get towards the right answer. You mentioned the Write It as one book. For the people who prefer to read or listen to podcasts, any other tips you have for them in terms of people to follow? Or
Lenny's podcast I know is super popular.
Lenny who?
It's called Lenny's Podcast. I can't pronounce his surname.
There you go.
It's the number two tech podcast in the world at the moment. And podcast can be touch and go.
That can be.
But he interviews like really capable people. Like he just recently interviewed the CEO of Intercom about how they almost went bankrupt and then, not bankrupt, but they were plateauing and created Fin and they generated this amazing business. So the guests on there are high quality and it's actionable, practical stuff around early stage product management development. So I've got many, which we can drop in the comments, but I'll do that one for time.
Yeah, and anyone in the physical product world, look up rapid prototyping. Anytime you punch that in, you'll generally get a whole suite of different tools and methods and technologies that you can utilize in your day-to-day life. It's all from really super accessible right through to anyone that has a little bit more of a budget. Look, please call me up. But yeah, there's a whole suite. Rapid prototyping is generally the term that will get you the most sort of solutions. And just like Adam said, go and do it. Go try it out. Yeah, try it on your at home. Become like me, where you end up doing about 10 iterations of the latest baby gate lock because the other one broke. But yeah, just you just got to get hands on, and you've got to there's so much resource out there. I learn all this by doing and by looking at other resources, and it's a learning by doing sort of process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. We've got one other audience question, which came from Alex in Melbourne. Who asks, are there multiple prototyping frameworks, which I think there most definitely are, but the second part of the question was interesting. How do people connect these when you've got existing innovation frameworks in an organization? If you've already got a particular model that the company uses, whether it's a jobs to be done framework or whatever it may be. So talk to me about that. How have you seen people successfully integrate this into existing innovation ways of working?
Sorry, Adam.
No, go for it.
I learned this lesson about 4 years in that it makes no sense to say, hey, we've got the shiny way of doing things, because you have to integrate, of course, tightly with existing process and you don't live on an island. So integrating into the product management framework at the right point in the organization, which is early stage idea screening, which is neglected. The easy way to figure it out, if it exists, is you go, show me the idea backlog. And there isn't the idea backlog. There's thousands of spreadsheets and things all over the place.
Yep.
So where's the point at which you inject a framework, whatever it is, prototyping, design, sprints, human-centered design, whatever it is. Like, what is the problem that it's solving? And figure out the point in that process at which you go, we have an idea, and you ask yourself a simple question, which is, do we have data from our customers, not generally, from our customers to prove that they want this problem solved? If you do, go ahead and build a thing. If you don't, drop down into prototyping.
Yep. Great.
Yeah, and that's like a perfect segue, actually. Hopefully, if you're in that business, you've gone and applied the prototyping and you've got the right idea. So let's step into the realm of what the physical one is and where that plugs into the MPD process. You'll have that idea as a brief, right? And so many businesses I see go from that brief to production, and they just jump straight there. There's no testing and development. So it's a really good plug and play situation where you can actually put it into that pre-production development timeframe. And the thing that I find with the most traction, I've worked with companies that have never done it before, and they go, "Why would I do this?" And I go, "What's your development time frame from the brief to the production?" And they go, "Oh, it's 3 months before we're going to go brief to production." And I'm like, "All right, I'll cut that down to a couple of weeks." And they go, "How can you do that?" And I go, "Okay, let's look at the marketing brief. Let's create the prototype. Let's test it." And then you do that iteratively over about 2-3 times, and then you go, "There you go. There's the one." And so it's through that value proposition. I look at it, how's it valuable for the business?
Yes.
Because I know it's going to work. And then I frame it and I go, okay, you want to plug this in because it's also going to cut down your cost and time.
Yep.
And so that for them, it's really important that sort of happens at that stage, really, because so many just don't. They jump, they skip it.
Indeed, and that's what we hopefully have helped people give some inspiration why not to do that. So, look, I've had a great time. This was both the things I wanted this to be. A lot of fun, and I learned stuff as well. Hopefully, everybody out there, you've learned some things as well. Huge thanks to Leslie and Adam for not just making the time today, but the time that we've spent on pre-prepping and getting this one happening. And the event's not over. So in the spirit of prototyping, we're using a prototype format for this event, which we called Webinar, because I think all of the people who work with me would have been disappointed if A, I wasn't just wearing a T-shirt, and B, if there wasn't some terrible pun involved. So,
and we prototyped the name. Pretotyping is getting to that name.
But for those of you who are in Melbourne or want to come to Melbourne, I do know of at least one person who came all the way from Oregon.
Oh, wow.
Maybe not just for this event, but who's going to be coming along.
Yes, just right.
But we will be available for Q&A, follow-up questions, or just to have fun and have a drink at Whiskey and Ailment, which is on Russell Street in the city. So that will kick off from 6:30. We'll pack up here and make our way there. And we were placing bets before. We will let you know tomorrow the result of the experiment in terms of how many people of the 40 or so that have registered we see for a drink. So with no further ado, thank you, gentlemen, and we'll see some of you at Whiskey and Ailment. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Adam and Adam.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good job.
Excellent.
Went well.
Boom.
Good job.
Excellent stuff.
Well done, Adams.
Let's see. Let's see. I was checking to see if anyone pumped any questions in the comments, which I didn't see. So it's good to have those couple of ones preloaded.
We've got very good content.